Once upon a time, in the fast-paced city of Abuja, Nigeria's capital, there was a man named Femi. Femi was the very picture of charm and handsomeness, with a smile that could disarm even the most careful hearts. He was known throughout the city as a playboy, a man who had seen many beds but shared none of the consequences. Femi was born into a wealthy family. He enjoyed the luxury of a carefree life. His days were spent lounging in upscale bars. But beneath the life of luxury lay a trail of broken hearts. Femi had a pattern. He was quick to woo and quicker to discard. Many women had come into his life, all hoping to be the one to change his roguish ways. There was Amaka, a soft-spoken Igbo girl, whose eyes sparkled with dreams of a future with Femi. She was kind and nurturing, always doting on him, believing his sweet lies. Then there was Aisha, a fairy Hausa beauty, whose elegance was only matched by her ambition. She fell hard for Femi's sweet words, dreaming of a life that would never come. Fatima, from the serene city of Jos, was next. Her gentle spirit was no match for Femi's deceit. And then came Funke, a Yoruba girl from Lagos, who was as smart as she was beautiful. Yet even she was charmed by Femi's manipulative ways. Each of these women, like many others, ended up heartbroken. Whenever any of them got pregnant, hoping for a life with him, Femi was quick to dismiss them with cold indifference. "It's not the right time," he would say. "I'm not ready to be a father." He was quick to discard and turn his back on any lady who became pregnant for him. Years went by, and Femi remained the same, unrepentant and unmoved by the pain he caused. But time is a great teacher, and even the most stubborn of hearts can grow weary of the same routine. As Femi approached his 40s, he started to feel a sense of emptiness. His friends were getting married, settling down, starting families, while he continued to drift from one conquest to another. The thrill of the chase was beginning to fade, and for the first time in his life, Femi found himself yearning for something more, something deeper. He wanted a wife, but not just any wife. He wanted a pure, untouched girl from the village who would be obedient, docile, and different from the women he had known in Abuja. So Femi decided to return to his roots in Ondo State, a place he had not visited in many years. His village was a quiet, peaceful place, far removed from the hustle and bustle of city life. There, he hoped to find a bride who will embody the virtues he now sought. It did not take long for Femi to find what he was looking for. Her name was Ajoke, a beautiful, shy virgin girl who had just turned 20. She was the daughter of a local farmer, a girl of humble means, but great beauty. Her skin was the color of roasted almonds, her eyes wide and filled with innocence, and her smile warm enough to melt the hardest of hearts. Femi saw her and knew instantly that she would be his. Ajoke's parents were delighted when Femi expressed his interest in their daughter. They had heard of his family's wealth and influence and saw this as a great opportunity for their daughter to have a better life. Ajoke, on the other hand, was both excited and nervous. She had heard stories of city life, and though please subscribe to this channel, like, share, and comment. Though she was scared of the unknown, she was also eager to see the world beyond her village. The wedding was a grand affair filled with the colors and rhythms of traditional Ondo culture. Drummers beat their drums, dancers twirled in their vibrant attires, and the village elders blessed the union with prayers and libations. Femi's fine agbada was a picture of joy. Ajoke, in her bridal attire, was a vision of beauty. She was excited yet timid, stepping into a new life that promised so much more than she had ever seen. After the wedding, Femi took Ajoke away to Abuja to a life of comfort and luxury. Ajoke was the perfect wife, quiet, respectful, and eager to please. She would prepare Femi's meals with care, tend to their home with diligence, and never utter a word of complaint. Femi was pleased. He had found the perfect woman, untouched by the ways of the city. Life was perfect. But as the weeks turned into months, Ajoke began to feel the sting of loneliness. Femi was often away, still dabbling in his old ways, though now more discreetly. Ajoke was left alone in a grand house that felt more like a gilded cage. She knew no one in the city, had no friends, and her days were filled with silence. Slowly, she began to venture out, first to the market, then to other parts of the city. She was fascinated by the vibrant life around her, the colors, the sounds, the energy. And soon enough, she began to make friends. Ajoke's new friends were nothing like the girls from her village. They were city girls, bold, confident, and full of life. They introduced her to the nightlife, the clubs, and the thrill of Abuja after dark. At first, Ajoke was hesitant, but the excitement was intoxicating. She began to enjoy the music, the dancing, the freedom. It was a side of life she had never known, and she liked it. Femi, engrossed in his affairs, paid no attention to the changes in his wife. He would come home late, tired from his escapades, and barely noticed that Ajoke was no longer the same shy village girl he had married. But soon, the signs became too glaring to ignore. Ajoke began to come home late, sometimes not at all. She started dressing differently, more provocatively, and her attitude grew bolder. She no longer cooked his meals or cared much for his needs. One night, Femi came home to find Ajoke in the living room, not alone. She was with a man, a stranger. She looked at Femi with a mocking grin. Femi's blood boiled. "What is this nonsense, Ajoke?" he yelled. But before he could utter another word, Ajoke snapped her fingers, and two neighborhood boys, whom she had befriended, emerged from the shadows. They grabbed Femi and dragged him outside and taught him a bitter lesson as Ajoke watched, her face a mask of disdain. From that day on, Femi's life took a turn for the worse. Ajoke no longer hid her affairs. She would bring men home right in front of him and dared him to say a word. Whenever he complained or tried to assert his authority, she would call upon the boys to teach him a lesson. Femi was trapped in a nightmare of his own making. The once proud and carefree playboy was now a shadow of his former self, humiliated and broken. He realized far too late that his village wife was his karma, a punishment for all the hearts he had broken, all the pain he had caused. Ajoke was not the naive village girl he thought he could control. She was a reflection of his own sins, which have now come to claim their due. Femi's ordeal with Ajoke has only just begun. As he grappled with his new reality, he must find a way to survive in a world where the tables have turned and he is no longer the predator, but the prey. Femi lay on the cold, hard floor of his lavish home, his body bruised and battered from yet another beating. His once proud spirit had been broken, replaced by a deep sense of dread that grew with each passing day. Ajoke had transformed before his very eyes from a shy, innocent village girl into a woman he could barely recognize. She wielded power over him with a ruthlessness he has never anticipated. Every time Femi tried to assert himself, Ajoke would only laugh. Her friends would join in, and the boys she had hired would rattle him up. As he stared up at the ceiling, trying to gather his thoughts, Femi could hear Ajoke's voice from the other room. She was on the phone, speaking in a language he did not understand, laughing and making plans for another night out. He could hear her friends giggling in the background, their voices filled with excitement and anticipation. A wave of anger washed over him, but he knew better than to react. He had learned the hard way that any resistance will only lead to him being punished. Weeks turned into months, and Femi's life became a waking nightmare. Ajoke had taken over every aspect of his life. She had cut off his access to his bank, leaving him without money or resources. She had even taken his car keys, leaving him stranded in his own home. He was now completely dependent on her mercy, a mercy that she showed less and less of each day. One evening, as Femi sat alone in the living room nursing his wounds, Ajoke walked in. She was dressed in a short glittering dress that clung to her body, her face adorned with bright makeup. She looked more like a stranger than the woman he had married. Without a word, she walked past him, her heels clicking against the marble floor, and headed to the door. "Where are you going?" Femi managed to croak, his voice weak and trembling. Ajoke turned to him, her eyes cold and distant. "Out," she replied curtly, "and don't wait up for me. I'll be back when I feel like it." "Ajoke, please," Femi pleaded. "I'm your husband. We need to talk. This isn't how a marriage is supposed to be." Ajoke laughed, a cruel, mocking sound that sent shivers down Femi's spine. "Husband?" she sneered. "You think you are my husband? You're nothing but a fool, Femi. You thought you could buy a wife from the village and make her your slave. But look at you now, helpless, weak. You are no man, Femi. Not anymore." With that, she turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. Femi was left alone in the silence of the house, his mind racing with fear and confusion. He had to do something. He couldn't go on living like this. He had to find a way to escape, to regain control of his life. But how? Ajoke had stripped him of everything, his dignity, his resources, his freedom. Days passed and Femi's desperation grew. He knew he could not go on like this. He needed help, but he was too ashamed to ask anyone. Who would believe him anyway? A grown man being controlled and abused by his own wife? He could already hear the laughter and mockery that would greet his cries for help. He was trapped and he knew it. One night, after Ajoke had left for yet another night out, Femi decided to take matters into his own hands. Please subscribe to this channel, like, share, and comment. He waited until he was sure she had gone, then made his way to the bedroom where she kept her purse. He checked through, searching for anything that could help him. Finally, he found what he was looking for, a small hidden stash of money. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get him started. With trembling hands, Femi took the money and left the house. He knew he couldn't stay in Abuja. He had to get far away from Ajoke and her influence. He needed to start afresh, to find a way to rebuild his life. He headed to the nearest bus stop, his heart pounding in his chest. He had no idea where he was going, but he knew he had to leave. He bought a ticket to Lagos, hoping that in the chaos of Nigeria's biggest city, he could find a way to disappear. As the bus pulled out of the station, Femi stared out of the window, his mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He had lost everything, and now he was running with nothing except for a few naira notes in his pocket and the clothes on his back. But he was determined. He had to escape Ajoke's grip, no matter what it took. Meanwhile, back in Abuja, Ajoke returned home to find the house empty. At first, she thought Femi was hiding, but after searching the entire house, she realized he was gone. A slow smile spread across her face. She knew exactly where he had gone. She knew Femi better than he knew himself. She picked up her phone and made a call. "He's on his way," she said into the receiver. "Make sure he doesn't get far." As the bus raced down the highway towards Lagos, Femi began to feel a glimmer of hope. He had escaped. He was free. But little did he know his troubles were far from over. Ajoke was not a woman to be underestimated, and she was already several steps ahead of him. As the bus sped along, Femi felt a mix of anxiety and hope. The further he got from Abuja, the lighter he felt, as if he was shedding the chains that Ajoke had so tightly bound around him. He stared out the window, watching the landscape blur into a tapestry of green fields and scattered villages. His mind wandered to thoughts of what lay ahead. In Lagos, he would start anew, find a job, and rebuild his life from the ground up. He was determined to put the past behind him, but the journey was not as smooth as Femi had hoped. Just a few hours into the trip, the bus pulled over for a routine stop at a rest area. Femi used the opportunity to stretch his legs and get some fresh air. He walked around the small station, his eyes darting nervously as if expecting to see Ajoke's shadow lurking around every corner. He knew it was unlikely she would find him so soon, but he could not shake the feeling of being watched. Suddenly, Femi noticed a group of men standing by a sleek black SUV, parked just a short distance away. They were talking among themselves. One of them glanced in his direction. Femi's heart began to race. There was something familiar about one of the men, a broad-shouldered, stern-faced figure who looked just a little too comfortable in his own stance. Femi had seen him before. He was one of the neighborhood boys Ajoke had often hired to roughen him up. Panic surged through Femi's veins. He quickly turned on his heels and made his way back towards the bus. He tried to remain calm, to blend in with the other passengers milling around, but his mind was racing. Had Ajoke sent them after him? Was there nowhere he could hide from her reach? He quickened his pace, his heart pounding in his chest. As he neared the bus, he felt a strong hand clamp down on his shoulder. Femi, a voice said from behind him, cool and threatening. Where do you think you are going? Femi spun around, his eyes wide with fear. It was the man from the SUV, and now he could see the others approaching too. They had surrounded him, blocking his path back into the bus. I don't want any trouble, oh, Femi stammered, raising his hands defensively. Please, just let me go. The man smirked. His grip tightened on Femi's shoulders. You think you can just run away from Madame Ajoke? You are coming with us. Without any other word, they dragged Femi towards the SUV. He struggled, trying to break free, but he was outnumbered and overpowered. They shoved him into the back seat and quickly climbed in after him. As the SUV reared to life and sped away from the rest area, Femi felt a sinking feeling of dread settle in his stomach. He had underestimated Ajoke's reach, and now he was paying the price. The ride back to Abuja was a blur of fear and confusion. The men kept a close watch on Femi, their expressions unreadable. He tried to make sense of his situation, to think of a way out, but his mind was a jumble of panic and despair. He had thought he could escape, that he could leave his past behind, but Ajoke had proven to be more resourceful than he could have ever imagined. Hours later, the SUV pulled up to a familiar building, a dilapidated warehouse on the outskirts of Abuja. Femi was dragged out of the car and forced inside. The interior was dimly lit, with shadows dancing along the walls. He could make out a few figures standing in the darkness, waiting for him. And then he saw her, Ajoke, sitting in a chair in the center of the room, her legs crossed, her expressions calm and composed. She was dressed in a sleek black outfit, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked every bit the queen in her domain, and Femi felt a chill run down his spine. Welcome back, Femi, Ajoke said, her voice smooth and mocking. Did you really think you could run away from me? Femi fell to his knees, his body trembling. Ajoke, please, please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to run away. I just can't live like this anymore. Ajoke's eyes narrowed, her expressions hardened. You think you deserve mercy? He snapped. After everything you've done? After all the women you've hurt? The lives you have ruined? No, Femi, you don't get to run away. Not from me. She stood up and slowly walked over to him, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. You see, Femi, she continued, her tone cold and deliberate. I'm not like those other women you used to play with. I'm not going to let you go so easily. You made a vow to me, and you will honor it, whether you like it or not. Femi felt tears welling up his eyes. He had never felt so helpless, so utterly defeated. Please, Ajoke, he whispered. Please subscribe to this channel, like, share, and comment. I'll do anything. Please, just let me go. Ajoke crouched down in front of him, her face inches from his. Anything? She repeated softly, a cruel smile playing on her lips. Very well then, Femi. I have a proposition for you. If you can prove to me that you've changed, that you are truly sorry for what you have done, I might consider letting you go. But if not, she trailed off, letting the threat hang in the air. Femi nodded frantically, desperate for any chance to escape his nightmare. Yes, yes, I'll do anything, he agreed. Just tell me what to do. Ajoke stood up and turned to the men. Take him back to the house, she ordered, and make sure he doesn't try anything stupid again. The men grabbed Femi and hauled him back into the SUV. As they drove away, Femi's mind raced with thoughts of what Ajoke had in store for him. He knew she wasn't bluffing. He had seen the darkness in her eyes, the same darkness that had turned his life into a living hell. He had no choice but to comply. One day, Ajoke left the house with her friends, leaving Femi under the watchful eyes of her goons. Femi quickly escaped again while they were sleeping. He ran through the streets of Abuja to meet his mechanic friend Jubril, who loaned him a car in return for a favor Femi had extended to him. Femi drove through the night, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. He kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see Ajoke's men in pursuit. But the roads were empty, and as dawn began to break, he felt a small glimmer of hope. Maybe he had really done it. Maybe he was finally free. He reached Lagos by midday. One evening, as he sat in a small roadside restaurant in a remote town, Femi overheard a conversation between two men at the next table. They were talking about a woman who had been asking questions about a man who matched Femi's description. His heart sank. She was still looking for him? He realized then that he could never truly escape her. Ajoke was relentless, and she would never rest until she had him back under her control. Femi knew he had only one option left. He had to confront Ajoke, to face her once and for all. He couldn't keep running forever. He had to end this nightmare. He made his way back to Abuja, moving cautiously, always watching his back. When he arrived, he knew exactly where to find her. He went to their old house, the place where it all started. He stood outside the gate, his heart pounding in his chest. He had no plan, no strategy. He was running on pure desperation. He pushed open the gate and walked inside. The house was dark and silent, but he could feel Ajoke's presence. She was waiting for him. He made his way to the living room, where he found her sitting in the same chair where he had last seen her, her expression calm and composed. So, you have come back, Ajoke said, her voice cold. I knew you would. You can't run from me, Femi. You belong to me. Femi swallowed hard, his fist clenching at his side. I'm not running anymore, Ajoke, he said quietly. This has to end. You can't keep doing this. Ajoke stood up slowly, her eyes blazing with fury. You think you have a choice? She spat. You think you can just walk away after everything you've done? Femi shook his head. No, Ajoke, I don't have a choice, but neither do you. This has to end, one way or another. Ajoke stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she began to laugh, a low mocking laugh that sent chills down Femi's spine. You think you are brave, don't you? She sneered. But you are still the same coward you've always been. Femi took a step forward, his voice steady. Maybe I am, Ajoke, but I'm done running. Do what you have to do. Ajoke's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold determination. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small knife, holding it up to the light. You're right, Femi, she said. This has to end. Femi braced himself, his body tense. He knew this was it, the moment that would decide his fate. Ajoke took a step towards him, the knife glinting in her hand. But just as she raised her arm, there was a sudden commotion outside. The front door burst open, and a group of men stormed in. Police officers. Their guns drawn. Freeze! One of them shouted. Drop the weapon! Ajoke hesitated for a moment, her eyes darting between Femi and the officers. Then, With a furious scream, she lunged at Femi. The knife, please subscribe to this channel, like, share, and comment, aimed at his chest. But before she could reach him, she was tased. Ajoke staggered, her eyes wide with shock, and then crumpled to the floor. Femi stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. The officers rushed forward, securing the scene. "It's over," one of them said, turning to Femi. "You are safe now." Femi sank to his knees, his body trembling with relief and exhaustion. It was over. Finally, it was over. The police led Ajoke away to the station and was charged. In the days following Ajoke's arrest, Femi found himself in a strange state of mind. Relief, guilt, and a profound sense of emptiness swirled around him. He had been running for too long, and now that it was finally over, he wasn't sure what to do next. Femi realized that indeed he had brought much of this upon himself with his reckless behavior and the way he had treated the women in his past. Karma had come for him in the form of Ajoke, and it had exacted a heavy toll on him. He relocated from Abuja. And so, in the quiet town of Enugu, far from the chaos of Abuja and the painful memories of the past, Femi found a new beginning. He learned that karma is not just about retribution, but also about redemption. He had paid his dues, faced his demons, and now finally he was ready to live again.